everyone. Obviously, very rough
Sunrise
night.
check-in. Well, it's just past sunrise now.
Alfred from where I am here.
Situated at Old Cleveland Road.
If you need to get out of your home and you're concerned,
other really important emergency update stuff.
What we'll see really is the flood risk take over.
At the moment, a few of us are trapped at home, including ourselves. Fortunately, our house is fine, but the water's up over our front gate, so that's the reality at the moment.
Tropical cyclone Alfred and its aftermath drenched and battered the planned path through Australia's electoral calendar over the weekend.
Certainly, my sole focus is not calling an election. My sole focus is on the needs of Australians. That is my concern at this difficult time.
The Prime Minister and his leadership group decided in a phone hookup on Friday that plans to go to the polls in the immediate aftermath of the weekend's Western Australian election would have to be dumped. The focus had to be on what, at that stage, looked like a natural disaster with the potential to hit 4 million people on an unprecedented scale. Pragmatically, the optics of talking about politics and elections in the middle of it all was just not viable. After all, the opposition leader was already in damage control when it was discovered he had left his electorate to go to Sydney for a fundraising dinner.
It wasn't a party, it was a fundraising dinner. The Prime Minister and I are doing them around the country at the moment. I'd received a briefing in the morning, went down, I had diary commitments, including lunch with an Archbishop.
The government is now locked into proceeding with its planned March 25 budget and, therefore, an election in early May called after the budget. There are pluses and minuses. While the budget would highlight a return to deficits, it will also be a platform for Labor to zero in on the cost of living issue, including via extending energy subsidies, where the coalition is exposed by a lack of discernible policies.
We will always do what we can to assist people. That is one of the defining characteristics of my term of government. Our opponents have opposed every one of those cost of living measures.
A big spending Labor Greens government could see interest rates going back up at a time when families really want them to come down. So there's no sense giving money with the one hand and then seeing it taken with the other. And that's what we're seeing in relation to the energy supplements.
There were multiple reasons for the Prime Minister to be feeling optimistic over the weekend. 2 opinion polls show the government and the Prime Minister finally clawing their way back into contention. The YouGov poll has Labor ahead for the first time in 8 months, 51 to 49 on a 2-party preferred basis. Newspoll still has the coalition leading by the same margin, but the PM's approval rating is pulling ahead for the first time since September last year. And then there was Western Australia.
This is, to put it in context, this is the second largest victory in history in Western Australia. That is quite remarkable for a government seeking a 3rd term in office. Roger Cook deserves that.
Well, look, it's a mixed result in WA. In a seat like Collie, where we've announced the nuclear reactor, there was a 20% swing to the Liberals in that seat. And it's a mixed bag across the rest of the seats.
Peter Dutton's mixed bag was a result in which his party is forecast to hold just 5 seats in the WA Parliament compared to Labor's 41, despite a big swing from the government of as much as 20%, particularly in the regions. Solid results in inner Perth seats have left both Labor strategists and independent poll analysts confident that the Albanese government should be able to hold on to at least 4 of the seats won in 2022. But there are still significant downsides to an election campaign deferred until May.
It's a great idea for them to have attack submarines. But the problem is that we are, as Secretary Rubio has said and others, there's a very real threat of a conflict in the coming years.
Elbridge Colby is US President Donald Trump's nomination for Undersecretary of Defence. In recent days, he has voiced the view that Australia should lift defence spending from its current level of 2% of GDP to 3%. And, perhaps more alarmingly for advocates of the AUKUS pact on both sides of politics, questioned whether America can afford to hand over any Virginia-class submarines to Australia.
So if we can produce the attack submarines in sufficient number and sufficient speed, then great. But if we can't, that becomes a very difficult problem because we don't want our servicemen and women to be in a weaker position and more vulnerable.
And there's a shorter-term problem too. Officials are deeply pessimistic that Australia will get an exemption from 25% US steel and aluminium tariffs due to begin on Thursday Australian time. Whatever the natural disasters and budget tensions at home, the prospects that the political brawl up until election day will be dominated by the actions of Donald Trump and his administration are high.